point of view switches to Sung Jinwoo and Jinho staring down the biggest gate Jinho has ever seen. Now of course it's not as big as the one Sung Jinwoo cleared in Gwangwali, but it's still pretty big. And this is technically going to be their first official raid as the Ajin Guild. As they walk up to the gate, they're attacked by reporters and fans. Sung Jinwoo at this point is a bona fide celebrity. They were asking him any and everything. How'd you come up with the name Ajin? What's the relationship with your fellow founding member Soo Yoon? He's then approached from Mr. Woo from the Hunters Foundation. And for those of you who don't remember, Mr. Woo is Gung-Go Hee's right-hand man. Jinwoo asks him, I thought the association was keeping my private information secret. What's going on? Mr. Woo replies, we can protect your private information, but we can't stop people from knowing where these massive gates are. And on top of that, we have no control over what your employee posts on social media, referring to Soo Yoon. Sung Jinwoo says, yeah, my bad, I'll keep that in mind. He then asks Sung Jinwoo, don't you think we should call a hauling team or a mining team? And Jinwoo's like, nah, I can handle this myself. I'll just have my shadows do all the work for me. Mr. Woo then takes a reading on all his shadows and he finds out they're all B rank or higher. If they were a squad of human hunters, they'd be more than qualified to enter an A-rate gate. He tells his associates that Sung Jinwoo is good to go, but in his head he thinks he's making a fool of all the people who are debating whether or not this was preferential treatment, because it definitely is. Then he suits up in armor himself and tells them the chairman ordered him to observe the raid. He wants to know if this is really a safe idea. Sung Jinwoo's like, alright, but are you gonna be okay? Mr. Woo's like, what you mean? And a few minutes later he finds out exactly what Sung Jinwoo meant. The gate they entered is filled to the brim with A-rank magic beasts called the Naga. Sung Jinwoo's army is having a field day with they ass. We got Tank ripping shoulders out their sockets. We got the high orcs replacing their spines with swords. We got the ants literally playing with their food. And Biru, my boy Biru, snatches one of their heads clean off their necks. I'm telling you, bro might be a better aura farmer than Sung Jinwoo. And Mr. Woo is amazed with what he's seen because normally the best of hunters would have problems facing the Naga, especially so many. But the beasts are no match for Sung Jinwoo's army because his shadow soldiers just keep on regenerating. He notes to himself that one is especially powerful, referring to Igris. Then we see Igris do some shit that's gonna go crazy in anime. He swings his sword and a massive lightning storm spawns. Mr. Woo thinks to himself, only mages of the highest level can wield lightning magic, but he creates a spark every time he swings his sword. See sparks of lightning from Igris' sword dash all the way around the gate, eviscerating multiple Naga at a time. First, Mr. Woo was like, is he A rank? He's like, nah, he gotta be higher than A rank. Then he thinks to himself, would I be able to win if we fought one-on-one? Side note, when I read that little bubble, I thought to myself, come on bro, you know good and goddamn well you do not have a chance against Igris. At this point, most of the Naga are defeated and they start moving on to the mining phase of the gate. And of course, per usual, the ants are eating up all the good shit, so Sung Jinwoo gives one a quick, swift kick in the ass. He said, hey, I told y'all not to eat those. Y'all have any idea how valuable those corpses are? He tells his other shadows to keep mining those crystals. Watching Sung Jinwoo crack the whip over his shadow soldiers during like the mining phase of the gates is hilarious to me. Mr. Woo thinks to himself again, he's capable of clearing an A-rank dungeon, retrieving corpses and mining mana crystals all by himself. This isn't just a one-man strike squad. But before he can finish his thought, the final boss Naga appears and bro is ginormous. Jinwoo stares him down and he says, those of you working can stay, everyone else return to my shadow. And you see everybody who wasn't mining come right back to Sung Jinwoo's location. Now this confuses Mr. Woo. He's like, why'd you have them go away? They could easily take down this Naga by themselves. Jinwoo says while materializing a sword, relying too much on my shadows makes me lose my touch and I gotta keep my senses strong. Then almost faster than the eyes can track, he launches himself in the Naga's direction. Lands on his forehead, hits him with 2 quick slashes, and jumps right back. And again, my boy Mr. Woo is watching this in complete awe, like bro's jaw's been open the entire trip. Sung Jinwoo just one-shotted an A-rank dungeon boss. Sung Jinwoo suddenly gets a notification from the system alerting him that he is upgraded to level 101. Which means all his job-specific skills like Shadow Extraction, Shadow Exchange, Monarch's Range have also leveled up. And this actually caught Jinwoo by surprise. He said, I can't believe I leveled up my job skills. Now the cooldown of the Exchange skill went down by an hour. It means eventually if he keeps leveling up Shadow Exchange, he'll be able to use it without a cooldown freely. He'll never have to worry about his mother's or sister's safety again. Mr. Woo's thinking to himself, the Naga scales are tough enough to be used as shields of armor, but bro just sliced through them with 2 daggers. And suddenly you hear Sung Jinwoo utter the word, arise. I know what y'all think of my rise. Can I be a voice actor? Let me know. Slowly we see the shadow arise from the Naga's corpse. The system tells him he has successfully enhanced his power and the shadow will start at level 13, which is the exact same level Tusk started out at. This also means thanks to him leveling up Shadow Extraction, the Naga is as strong as he is when he lived. The only thing is, he's a little bit smaller now, and usually they're the same size or they grow bigger when they become shadows. Even with that being the case, he is emitting an enormous amount of mana, so Sung Jinwoo was like, this is still a plus for me. Maybe he's like Tusk to where he can use magic to grow in size. Now that the Naga is fully extracted, the only thing left to do is give him a name, and for this one, Sung Jinwoo goes with Gemma. Now I think this is the first time Jinho watched Sung Jinwoo exchange a shadow, because he thinks to himself, wow, he turned that powerful monster into one of his summoned beasts. He's truly incredible. Suddenly the ceiling starts rumbling, which means it's time to exit this gate before it closes on us. Before they head out, they have to figure out something to do with that giant corpse, because giant corpse means good money. In the gate, you see the army reporters still there waiting for their return, and Tusk is the one to drag out the giant carcass of the Naga. Instantly begins snapping a million photos, and you see Tusk start to blush a little bit, which is kind of cute. Who would have known shadows can get a little shy? All the reporters are trying to get Jinwoo's attention, and Jinho marvels at the fact that there are even more reporters now than when they went in. Jinwoo mentions the fact that everyone seems to be interested in their first raid. In the back, you see Mr. Wu is still like, what the fuck just happened? The point of view then switches to Mr. Wu back at the Hunter's headquarters debriefing with Go Gun Hee. Mr. Go is not surprised at all. In fact, he laughs at the recount of the story. He said, "You've seen many different raids over the years, Mr. Wu. However, after hearing your report, I understand why even a veteran hunter like yourself found it overwhelming." Mr. Wu replied, "Respectfully, sir, what I witnessed was not a raid. That shit was a motherfucking massacre." Mr. Go says, "Alright, Mr. Wu, go get some rest. I can tell your ass need it." And now, all alone in his office, he thinks to himself, Sung Jinwoo cleared an A-rank dungeon, retrieved the corpses of magic beasts, and mined crystals. Calling him a one-man strike squad would be an understatement. He's a one-man guild. The very thought of that made him laugh and smile to himself, because that means he made the right call. Hunters of Korea know, from all over the world, are about to see the tides turn. The point of view then switches to Tokyo, Japan, where things are going to absolute shit. Smack dab in the middle of Shinjuku, a ginormous red gate just appeared. Last words of the chapter read, "A gargantuan presence menacingly looming in the sky." The point of view switches to the Chinese Hunters Association. These three guys are from various guilds, and they're marveling at the fact that all the major guilds, the Blades, the Phantoms, the Invincible Kings, and the Snowy Mountains, are being called into one meeting, which means China must be facing an immeasurable crisis. Suddenly, some of the strongest S-rankers in Japan walk in, and one of them says, "Isn't that Sujimoto Rigi, the Vice Guildmaster of the Blade Guild? And those are their strongest S-ranks." And the other one quickly corrected him. He said, "You idiot, that's the Guildmaster now, that's not the Vice Guildmaster." The Blades lost 7 S-ranks during the Jeju Island raid, including Goto Ryuji, right? And the third one said, "Yeah, I heard it was because they were carrying out the Chairman Matsumoto's crooked scheme." And these were clearly some haters, because they were happy at the fact that they're down bad after having most of the S-ranks in their guild. One of them says, "Who knows, if we play our cards right, we might have a shot at becoming the greatest guild in Japan." And then suddenly all 4 of the S-rank Blade members look at them with these cold stares, and them hating ass niggas turn around and act like they wasn't saying a word. And one of the S-rankers says, "Those losers couldn't even look us in the eye before, but they're getting cocky now that Mr. Goto's gone. Opportunistic bastards. I heard a rumor going around about the Phantom Guild acquiring the Snowy Mountain Guild." And then the lady S-ranker says, "Those 2 guilds have 4 S-rankers combined, same as us. They think merging together would make them the strongest guild in Japan now that Mr. Goto is dead. But even with all 4 S-rankers, they still don't stand a chance against these 4. The meeting officially begins, and one of the high-ranking officials says, "Why hasn't the Hunters Association said anything yet? The S-rank gate spawned in the heart of Tokyo, and you're telling me the association doesn't have any countermeasures? Tell us the truth. What if a dungeon break occurs? Then what? Even S-rank hunters aren't strong enough to clear S-rank gates. But national level hunters, on the other hand." One of the guild masters cuts him off, and by the looks of him, he's been through some shit. He says, "Prime Minister, you've summoned all the guild masters of Japan's major guilds today, so please refrain from asking such obvious questions. We all saw what happened on Jeju Island. It's pretty clear what will happen." Another guild master echoes his sentiment. He says, "Pessimistic remarks won't help the situation either. We need to be discussing concrete plans. That said, how about we hire Thomas Andre?" And then bro, who I'm assuming is a treasurer or something like that, is basically like, "Yeah, we ain't got the money for that." S-rankers across the world are becoming a scarce resource because the amount of gates opening daily globally is increased. Hiring S-rankers instead of national hunters would be a lot cheaper, but most countries aren't willing to send their S-rankers around right now. Then the guild master in the green jacket spoke up. He said, "There's one. There's a hunter who's willing to help as long as he's paid. The barrier specialist named Yuri Orlov." The point of view then switches to Sung Jinwoo in traffic, who is currently living his best life. He's marveling at the fact that he's level 101 now, he's obtained the key to the Cardinal Temple, and all the job specific skills have leveled up to 101. Bro is living his life like it's golden. He says to himself, "I look forward to seeing what happens once I reach level 102. He then starts to think about Jinho. He wonders how he's holding up, and he appreciates all the hard work he's doing, but he knows he needs to hire more people to help him out. Then suddenly, Sung Jinwoo senses somebody, senses a presence. And he looks to the left, looks to the right, and it's none other than Cha Hae-in. But first tries to act like she didn't see him and he didn't see her. So Sung Jinwoo shadow walked to her and asked, "Why are you running from me?" And what are you doing near my office? She says she's on this side of town because she left her car in his parking lot. And then Sung Jinwoo remembers, oh yeah, last time they were together, they shadow exchanged to the hunter's headquarters. She then asks him if he's free to talk about something. And before he can respond, a million questions pop up in her head. Why did he take that photo with Soo Yoon? Does she really work for him right now? And if so, why did she get hired instead of Cha-hae? Isn't an S rank better than an A rank? Are the two dating? She then goes on to say, I'm asking because Min Byung-gu asked me to relay a message to you about your powers. And this immediately sparks Sung Jin-woo's interest. He invites her upstairs and the two head on into the building. When they get inside, the building is completely empty and she asks why isn't anybody here? To which he says the Vice Guildmaster is out on business. And this makes Cha-hae a little bit nervous because she's like, oh shit, it's just us, we alone. But Sung Jin-woo gets straight to business. He says, so tell me, how did Min manage to give you a message for me? And he explains how she saw Min that day that he brought her back to life. Brought her back from the brink of death. And on the way out the void, he asked her to tell him to be careful of the powers that lie within him. And he explains that someone pulled him out of an endless darkness, but he was no longer himself. He was still conscious and he still had a sense of self, but at the same time he felt like he'd become a slave and was revived only to serve Sung Jin-woo. But the scarier part was, he felt happy to serve him. And Cha-hae asks, what do you mean? He responds that Sung Jin-woo's powers are incredibly strong and frightening, and he needs to know about them. And his last words before they parted ways were, remember, Sung Jin-woo's true army is, and then he repeats it again, his true army is, and then the point of view switches before we can actually get an answer. We see Sung Jin-woo, I believe in a gate, eating a Subway sandwich, and he's pondering to himself, I wonder if what she said is true. Either way, I need to find out the source of my powers, and at this point, it's more important than becoming a stronger hunter. And Jin-ho interjects, this reminds me of the days where we used to raid C-rank dungeons, sir. And Sung Jin-woo was like, bro, stop talking with your mouth full. Then Jin-ho asks, your shadows can move on their own, so why not just go about your business and let them do all the work? Now he replies, I can't do this, and in his head he's thinking about the experience points that he doesn't get the farther he is away from his soldiers. But he actually tells Jin-ho there's no telling what those guys will do when he's not looking, pointing at the ants. Side note, we all know Sung Jin-woo don't play about his XP. Jin-ho then asks, by the way, how's your sister doing? She's been through a lot. And he replies, the doctor says she needs rest for the time being. My most trustworthy shadow is looking after her, so she should be safe. And him calling this shadow his most trustworthy shadow is hilarious. I'm gonna explain in a second. He then thinks to himself, come to think of it, I could check on her right now. Then he explains the skill shared senses. This is an effect that allows him to see pretty much whatever his shadows are seeing. He closes his eyes and opens them and he sees a drama playing on TV. And the shadow watching that drama is no other than Biru himself. When bro was talking about his most trusted shadow, it was Biru, and I love that for him. And this is hilarious because Biru was literally yelling at the TV. Gina had fell asleep and I guess Biru had picked up a TV habit. So bro is locked in watching whatever K-drama is on at the moment. Jinwoo sees that everything's fine with Jin-ah and decides to check on the others. The first one he checks on is his mom, and she's doing some grocery shopping or something along those lines. And then the next person he sees is currently in a shower, and you see the water splashing at the bottom of the basin. When the picture gets a little clearer, we see is no other than Cha-hae taking a bath. Jinwoo, you naughty boy. Jin-ho snaps him back to reality and asks him if he dozed off for a second because my brother was in La La Land. And Jinwoo clearly feels guilty. He thinks to himself, I should apologize to her for that. Maybe I'll ask her to dinner or something. Jin-ho then changes the subject and says, by the way, did you hear about the news? An S-rank gate popped up in Japan, and if it's not cleared within 3 days, there's gonna be a dungeon break. I hear Japan's been recruiting hunters from all over the world. Have you been contacted yet? And Jinwoo thinks to himself, has it already been that long since it spawned? He tells Jin-ho, yeah, he got the call, but he's been taking the time to think it over because he has a few other pressing matters to attend to. He then summons the key to the Cardinal Tunnel, and you see there's only 26 hours, 51 minutes, and 49 seconds left, which means in less than a day, he'll be able to go back to where it all started. And he thinks to himself, an invitation from the system itself. I wonder what kind of answers I'll find there. And he continues, what exactly are you? Don't you think it's about time you told me? Then he closes his inventory and tells Jin-ho it's time to get back to work. The point of view then switches back to the Chinese government building. Yuri Orlov has finally made it to China and he's introducing himself. He says, I am Yuri Orlov, and as you know already, people call me the best support type hunter in the world. He continues, I had a chance to look over the files the Blade Guild sent me, and I gotta say, it was smart of you to evacuate all the citizens. Side note, bro here sipping vodka in their face is kind of giving like drunk Russian. He continues, however, it seems like you lack manpower. Is it true that Japan can only send 6 S ranks on that mission? The Blades Guildmaster responds, yes. 1 S rank from each guild must stay behind to take care of all the A rank gates that have appeared across Japan. And the same goes for our guild. The 3 of us are going to participate in the raid and 1 S rank is going to stay behind. Then Yuri responds, clearly drunk by the way, you can see it in his face and eyes. No, that won't do. How do you expect to protect the country with that plan? He then slams his bottle on the table and says, I'ma need 3.6 billion. That translates to 10 million a day. Hire me and I'll hold back that gate for as long as you want. Needless to say, Reishi is taken aback by Yuri's outrageous offer. But giving zero fucks, Yuri doubles down on his offer. He says, yes, 10 million a day, 3.6 billion a year, and your country will be saved. Then he adds, I'm not asking for 36 trillion, and honestly, it's a lot less than what Thomas Andre would charge you. Now, apparently, Reishi is the only person who can understand him because he's been speaking Russian this entire time. The other two S-rankers can't understand what he's saying, but they can tell that it doesn't sound good. Yuri continues pitching his offer. He says, become national heroes for 10 million a day, or give up on your country and save a bit of cash. Do you really think you can afford to be picking and choosing right now? You should be on your hands and knees licking my boots. Reishi responds, sounds to me like you're pretty confident about your skills. And Yuri says, of course I am. It'll be more beneficial to hire me than 100 of those losers standing behind you. And although they don't know exactly what he's saying, they did get the gist that they just got disrespected. And then suddenly a force field activates around them. And Yuri says, you won't be able to move a single inch without my permission. But go ahead, give it your best shot. And no matter how hard they tried to move, they couldn't even open their mouths to speak. And they're astounded by the fact that he's able to restrict the movements of not one, but two S ranks completely. He repeats his offer again. I'll block that S rank gate for you, and as a bonus, I'll save your buddies' lives. Reishi humbly responds, thank you for demonstrating your abilities. However, I'm not even sure if the government will sign off on your price. Because at the end of the day, it's their money and it's their decision. On the outside, he's maintaining his composure, but deep down inside, he is furious. Is trusting this guy really our best bet? And then out loud he says, actually, I take that back. You mind if I make a quick call? The point of view then switches to the Jinwoo residence. Sung Jinwoo is in the process of heading out and his mother's in the back looking a little bit worried. She works up the nerve to ask him, I don't have to worry about you, do I? To which he responds, of course not. I just have an appointment to get to. I'll be back as soon as I can, Mom. And then we're shown the key to the Cardinal Temple in his inventory, and the time is slowly winding down. 56 seconds, 32 seconds, 15 seconds, 11 seconds, 6 seconds. As the clock winds down, the key slowly begins to activate, until the system gives him this message: the location of the key's gate will now be revealed. The point of view then switches to Jin'a's school, where apparently another gate is opened. Luckily for them, the school is still closed down from the last incident, so there are no students in the vicinity. A hooded man walks up to the gate, and of course, we know it's Sung Jinwoo, but the hunters that are stationed there are like, hey yo, off limits, what are you doing? Until he removes his hood, and they're like, Sung Jinwoo? He asks them, how long has it been since the gate first spawned? She says 3 days. This brings Sung Jinwoo to the realization that he got played by the system. The system said it would only disclose the location of the gate after a certain period of time, but it never said the gate would appear at that time. And the fact that it's already been 3 days means Jinwoo needs to get on the move before somebody else enters the gate. But unfortunately, it was too late. He asked if another group of hunters already went in, and she said yes, about 2 hours ago. He immediately begins walking towards the gate and tells them this needs to be called off right away. And this confuses her because by their calculations, this gate should be about C rank. But Jinwoo says the strike squad is in danger, and if they don't end the raid right now, everyone will die. And they're still not understanding, but he says, listen, I don't have time to explain, I'm about to go bring them back. Now inside the gate, the guards have already made it to the doors of the Cardinal Temple. And no matter how hard they tried, no matter what spells they used, they couldn't get those doors to budge an inch. And out of nowhere, Sung Jinwoo says from behind them it's a trap, which scared the shit out of him because they didn't know anybody else was there. They ask him to identify himself, and he says someone who survived a double dungeon, which of course confuses them, but then somebody recognizes him as Sung Jinwoo. And then suddenly everybody recognizes him. Oh, that's the S-rank hunter Sung Jinwoo, and he says, terrible danger lies behind those doors. Listen, I got this. I'll take it from here. Y'all go ahead and head back. He reaches to pull the door open and it's locked, and he wonders if it's because of a spell, which honestly, the fact that he was given a key to the doors makes me question, like, bro, are you slow? Clearly you need a key to unlock the doors. Like, what are we doing? The system then activates and says the doors to the Cardinal Temple are currently locked. Please use the key. Goofy ass. Now Sung Jinwoo starting to put 2 and 2 together. He says this is different from last time, so this is why I needed a key. Now nobody else could actually see the key, so to them the doors just open for him. The leader of the party works up the nerve to confront Sung Jinwoo about entering the gate. He says the entry permit for this dungeon was bought by us, the Courage Guild, which means you have no right to tell us to leave. A few people in this party agree with him. They said he's right. Being an S rank doesn't mean you can order us around. Sung Jinwoo is just like, alright dog, whatever. I'm not gonna stop you. Anybody who wishes to enter is free to do so. So Mr. Leaderman, since he spoke up, he's like, alright, I guess I gotta be the one to do it. As soon as he walks in, the system speaks up and says someone has entered the temple without a key. Entry is not permitted. And then almost instantaneously, one of the stone statues attacks. But just at the last minute, Sung Jinwoo pulls his ass back and saves him from being completely crushed. Side note, I'm not even gonna lie, that does look scary as hell. The statues with the red eye and like the shadows and shit, like they really did that. I know the anime is gonna cook. And Jinwoo says, yeah, there's gonna be a lot more of that in there. Do you guys still wanna go inside? I mean, I told you I ain't gonna stop you. And they're like, nah, bro, you got it. And he's like, all right, bet. Now, when y'all leave the dungeon, please contact the association and let them know that this is a double dungeon situation. And then he enters the temple doors and the system activates again, saying the one with the key has entered the temple. And the doors immediately slam shut behind him. Now, the deeper he walks into the temple, the brighter it gets with these torches lined up on the walls. You see the statues lined up on the wall as well, and although they're not moving, they definitely have a presence. Then he finally gets to the archangel looking one in the middle with the tablet of commandments. The final torches at the end of the temple are lit, and now you can see everything just like we saw in that first episode. And Jinwoo just gets this feeling, this is where it all began. I'm finally back to where it all started. But things are different this time around, and I can feel that in my bones. These statues are neither beasts nor living things. They're just puppets. Only one being in this room is radiating mana. And then the point of view pans to the statue with the red eyes. You know, that statue. And Sung Jinwoo says, so you're the one in control. And suddenly his eyes slam shut. And Jinwoo says, are you gonna keep your mouth shut? Don't you think it's time you gave me an answer? And then suddenly things get eerily quiet as he stares down the main statue. A devious looking face appears in the shadow of the hood with bright red eyes and sharp teeth. And while smiling a devilish grin, he says, I see you finally made it this far. The point of view switches back to the Japanese airport. Yuri has finally made it to Japan where he's being treated like a bona fide superstar. He's stopped by some reporters who ask him what his strategy is for blocking off the gate, to which he replies by using the same strategy I use all the time. I'm gonna draw a huge magic circle around the gate and pour my mana into it. Simple. And whatever's inside the circle won't be able to get out. The reporter then asks, does that mean you're capable of blocking off an S-rank gate all by yourself? The public isn't quite on board with the idea. What would you like to say to all the skeptics out there? To which he replied, it's actually impossible for me to sustain a barrier on my own. But what's unique about my abilities is my barriers draw mana from the surroundings. So if large quantities of mana crystals are set up around Tokyo, my magic circle will absorb their mana. It's basically like starting up a car. Once I get the barrier up and running, it'll slowly transform into a sturdy wall by sucking up more mana. I'm gonna save each and every one of your lives, so just make sure you remember that. The point of view then switches to Mr. Gogun Heat watching this interview on TV. He says, I'm not sure if Yuri Orlov is capable of blocking off an S-rank gate, but I know what will happen if he fails. And then he asks what Sung Jinwoo is up to these days. Mr. Wu replies, the Ajin Guild's requested entry permits for all gates marked on this list. And Mr. Go's like, all these gates? Yes, sir. However, because they spawned in districts managed by the White Tiger Guild, the Hunters Guild, the Fiend Guild, and a few others, there could be some friction. And Mr. Go says, a new one-man guild that's as strong as any major guild. How amusing. And Mr. Wu agrees. He then asks if there's anything else. And Mr. Wu explains that they asked if they could take care of a nearby gate for the next week due to unspecified reasons. Mr. Go gives his blessing, saying it shouldn't be too much of a problem. Suddenly Mr. Wu gets a call and he has to excuse himself, which ends the conversation. Mr. Wu answers the phone and he's given a report about Jin'A's school. Another gate popped up in the same location, and although nothing crazy has happened yet, it has been determined to be a double dungeon. If you can't tell by the look on his face, I think bro got a little PTSD hearing the word double dungeon. He also tells him that Sung Jinwoo has entered said dungeon. Speaking of Sung Jinwoo, the point of view switches back to the Cardinal Temple. Here we see the hooded statue holding the tablet of commandments, but then something extremely interesting happens. He begins squeezing the tablet until it shatters into dust. And while the fragments of the commandments fall to the ground, he says, I see you finally made it this far. Sung Jinwoo responds, I guess those so-called commandments never meant anything, huh? And while donning a devilish grin, the hooded figure says, oh, they meant something. As of now, they are no longer important. Jinwoo asks, are you the one who called me here? The hooded figure smiles and responds, yes, and Sung Jinwoo hits him with a follow-up question. Are you a magic beast? And the hooded figure responds, you're asking the wrong questions. Instead of asking who I am, you need to be asking who you are. Suddenly you see the eyes of the surrounding statues glow red as they awaken to action. Now should be your final test, and if you're standing on your feet by the end, I will tell you everything. As the army of stone soldiers moves in closer, he says, that will be my reward to you. Almost instinctively, Jinwoo summons a shadow army, saying, come forth. The hooded statue snaps his finger and cancels a shadow summon. He says, that won't do. This is a test and no cheating is allowed. The system then gives an alert. The use of job-specific skills is not permitted for the final test. The hooded statue says, you're the only one I wish to assess. I don't care about your servant's abilities. The system shows another message reading, you are no longer authorized to purchase potions or other items from the shop. You are also not allowed to use quest rewards or level up rewards for status recovery. And for a second, Jinwoo is taken aback. He quickly recovers and says, so this is how it's gonna be, huh? Soldiers continue moving in closer and closer, and Jinwoo says, I didn't think all the cards in my hand would end up being useless. Suddenly, the first soldier cocks his arm back to launch his spear. Jinwoo thinks to himself, well, I can still use my inventory. In that case, I'll defeat everyone using my own strength. The soldier launches his spear directly at Sung Jinwoo. Instead of dodging it, Sung Jinwoo catches it with his hands, breaks the spear in two, cocks his arm back to return it to sender. He lands a direct hit smack dab in the middle of the eyes. Before the stone soldier can even react, Sung Jinwoo kicks the fragment of the spear straight through his head. One of the axe-wielding soldiers moves in to try to catch Sung Jinwoo off guard. Sung Jinwoo pulls out his double daggers to block the attack, ends up slicing the axe in two. Before the fragments of the axe could even hit the ground, he launches himself in that stone soldier's direction. He lands on the head of the soldier and digs both daggers deep into his skull. Before he can finish the job, his spidey senses start tingling and he looks around. One of the bow-wielding statues fires an arrow in his direction, but Sung Jinwoo snaps the arrow in half out of mid-air, somersaults off the head of the soldier he was fighting and kicks the arrow back in the direction of the sender. Lands a direct headshot and incapacitates the archer. And in Jinwoo's head he's thinking, yeah, that's right, I've been waiting for this moment. Oh, scratch that. I've been living for this moment. Meanwhile, the hooded statue is marveling at Sung Jinwoo's growth. He says, you've achieved so much with the body of a human. I'm truly impressed with how much you've grown. Jinwoo is still battling all the soldiers. At this point, they're trying to jump him. Like he said before, this time is totally different. Before, those statues were moving so fast it looked like they were teleporting, but now he can see each and every movement. Each of them are extremely powerful, but he knows deep down inside he can do this. And then here we have the hooded statue glazing him down again, looking like a proud father, saying truly impressive growth. It's still too early for this test to end, and suddenly the temple itself starts shaking wall to wall. A new statue just awakened, and this one the biggest of them all, and probably familiar to some of you guys who watched the first season. And then we're shown a colossal sized statue staring down at him. Just for your reference, this is how big he is. You see his head almost touches the ceiling. This is how big Sung Jinwoo and the other statues are. Like, I thought the other ones were big. Nah, this new one is massive. He makes the other ones look like regular sized humans. Suddenly he cracks that devilish smile from the first episode. The hooded statue says, now it's time to worship God. Point of view switches to a meeting between Go-Gun-Hee and the chairman of the Japanese Hunters Association, Mr. Matsumoto. Chairman Matsumoto just offered a contract that'll give up all the rights to the Essence Stones mined from Jeju Island. And Go-Gun-Hee is completely confused at this because why would they fork over so much treasure? And Matsumoto says because in return we'd like to hire Mr. Sung Jinwoo. And mind you, he's Korean, he's Japanese, so they're speaking two different languages. They have translators in the middle helping them out. This will be important later. Mr. Go laughs out loud and says, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but Sung Jinwoo is not an affiliate of the Hunters Association, which basically means Go has no control over this matter. Matsumoto says, I'm aware of that, however, we can't get in touch with him without the help of the Korean Hunters Association. I'm not asking you to put in a good word for me. All I ask is that you give me a chance to negotiate with him. And here we see Mr. Go thinking to himself, I can't believe they're willing to give up such an astronomical amount of money just for a chance to talk to him? Is it because they don't have the power to block off the S-rank gate that recently spawned in Tokyo now that Goto Ryuji's gone? This isn't a bad offer considering Sung Jinwoo's performance record, but then it's evident on Mr. Go's face that he's come to a conclusion that the reader doesn't know yet. Now switching over from Korean to Japanese, he says, I'd like to discuss these matters without interpreters. And this shocks Matsumoto because he did not know he spoke Japanese. And Mr. Go says, my father ran a small business in Japan when I was young. So after the interpreters left the room, he continues, Chairman Matsumoto, if this is another one of your crafty little schemes, I suggest you end it now. He says, what do you mean by that? And Go says, I've heard rumors that the Blade Guild has cut ties with you. Mr. Matsumoto is visibly shaken by the fact that he knows this. Mr. Go continues, it was pretty obvious. I could tell something was up when the Blade Guild rejected funding from the Japanese Hunters Association and only accepted government subsidies. The Blade Guild used to be at the beck and call of the Japanese Hunters Association. Because of Goto Ryuji, you were able to rally all the S ranks when you needed to, but that's not the case anymore. There's probably a power struggle going on between the other guilds now that the Blade Guild has fallen apart, and the association must be failing to control the situation. Isn't that right? Bro is reading this man like a Dr. Seuss book. He continues, if you guys fail to block off the S-rank gate, you'll be forced to take accountability for this. And though he had malicious intentions, Goto Ryuji was a hunter that represented Japan. So his death, the downfall of the Blade Guild, the mismanaged conflicts between the Japanese guilds, and the sacrifices that were made because of your crafty ploy, everything falls on your shoulders. Then he pushes forward a tape in Mr. Matsumoto's direction. A camera was connected to your receiver, one that belonged to Goto's team. And then with a venomous stare and glowing eyes, he said, did you really think I wouldn't find out? This is hardly the time for you to be negotiating with Essence Stones. If this information becomes public, the people of Japan will have to deal with the consequences of your crooked schemes. Then Mr. Go smashes the tape recording in his hand. No, excuse me, he smashes the entire table with the tape recording in his hand. But then he dials it back a little bit and says, however, I'm not cold-hearted enough to do something so cruel. I wouldn't want an entire country, no, all of Asia, to be plunged into a crisis because of one man's ploy. And for that grace, you'll have to thank Mr. Sung Jinwoo for this one. The point of view switches back to Sung Jinwoo in the middle of the fight of his life. He's beheading these stone soldiers left and right, but it's like the more he destroys, the more keep coming. And on top of that, there's still the ginormous one in the background gearing up to make a move. He says it's too late to dodge their attacks, so in that case, he puts away his weapons in order to free his hands to activate Commander's Touch, which pulls 3 or 4 soldiers together into one giant cluster. Suddenly, the giant statue fires these brilliant beams of light from his eyes. Using Commander's Touch, Jinwoo moved the clusters of soldiers in between him and the beam. Their bodies of stone were doing a pretty good job blocking the laser, but you can slowly see it seeping through. Then suddenly, the system activates and says, skill, the Commander's Touch has been upgraded to its final form, Commander's Authority. And just as the laser beam finally breaks through the stone cluster, Sung Jinwoo sidesteps it, narrowly dodging its area of effect. He says to himself, I have to get rid of this guy first, referring to the giant statue. He activates a speed burst and beams in the direction of the statue. The giant lifts his foot in an attempt to stomp Sung Jinwoo before he can make it to him, by slamming it on the ground and destroying everything in his vicinity. Then we see the giant crack that devilish grin, thinking he successfully stopped Sung Jinwoo's advance. But that smile quickly turned to surprise, as we see Sung Jinwoo leaping from the cloud of dust in the direction of the giant's head. As a rebuttal, we see the giant gearing up to fire another laser beam. And Jinwoo says, if I combine my speed with the Commander's Authority skill, I'll be able to go straight for its blind spot. What he means by this is the giant is huge. There's no way he can use Commander's Authority effectively and move him. So by trying to, we'll create a gravitational pull effect that'll help give him a little bit extra speed along with the speed he already has. He activates Commander's Authority and doubles his speed by catapulting himself towards the giant's head, which was just enough to narrowly pull him outside the laser beam's line of fire. Jinwoo says the gravitational pull is incredibly strong. I only used a fraction of my power, but it still worked on the target this large. That upgrade made a huge difference. Sung Jinwoo is now on his shoulder, and for the very first time, the statue looks worried. He launches an attack called Mutilation, which slashes the statue's face an immeasurable amount of times. But when the dust settled, those slashes were merely scratches and a smile returned to the giant's face. Jinwoo says the Demon King's dagger can usually slice through anything, but it only left scratches this time. So now he has to adjust his strategy. He says, well, if I can't slice through it, then I'll use brute force. I just have to aim for that crevice. And by that crevice, he's referring to one of the deeper slashes he made right by the crack of his mouth. So basically, he has to punch the giant in the jaw. He begins focusing all of his mana in his right arm. With glowing eyes, he cocks that motherfucker back and punches the giant in the mouth so hard that you literally see his cheek jiggling. And remember, bro is a stone statue. But Sung Jinwoo isn't done. He cocks that motherfucker back again and lets the giant have it a second time. And then a third time, and a fourth time, and he tells him, I'm gonna show you what it means to be level 103. And now the colossal giant has lost balance and falls face first on the ground, creating a massive explosion. Jinwoo lands on the ground right between 3 smaller stone soldiers. At first they're a little bit confused, but they quickly get over it and launch an attack. But Jinwoo is ready for him. He activates his Commander's Authority skill, this time unleashing a force that slams the giant's face down on the ground pancake style. He looks around to see if there are any more stone statues, but it looks like he took care of them. Thinks to himself, thanks to this battle, I feel like I've grown even more powerful, while clenching his fist. The hooded statue claps while saying, impressive, impressive. Jinwoo says, you better keep your promise. The hooded statue laughs and says, this test isn't over yet, my boy. Can't you see? I'm still here. Then the system sends him a message saying an urgent request has arrived. I am your final test, says the hooded statue. But suddenly the system starts acting weird. It gives him a message that your heart will stop beating if you fail to defeat the enemy within the allotted amount of time, and the time is 10 minutes. But suddenly the system and the hooded statue are speaking in unison. Sung Jinwoo was like, who the hell are you? The system and the hooded statue both say, I'm pretty sure I told you that was a silly question. But fine, I'll give you an answer. You want to know who I am? I am the architect of the system. The stone is slowly chipping away. You're seeing a little bit more of a brighter blue face underneath. And of course, while still donning a devilish grin, he asks, are you satisfied with my answer?